We're here with Laura Loomer. Let me start out by asking, how did you get involved in politics?
Well, okay, so when I was 18, I went to college, and I went to school in Miami at a place called Barry University after transferring out of Mount Holyoke. And at Barry, I was the president of the College Republicans. And when I was in college, I was majoring in
We're here with Laura Loomer. Let me start out by asking, how did you get involved in politics?
Well, okay, so when I was 18, I went to college, and I went to school in Miami at a place called Barry University after transferring out of Mount Holyoke. And at Barry, I was the president of the College Republicans. And when I was in college, I was majoring in broadcast journalism and minoring in political science. And while I was president of College Republicans, I participated in events with the Republican Party of Florida and often did a lot of different activities with the Republican Party of Florida and, was just doing some work for them on the side. And then I got involved with Mitt Romney's presidential campaign and was, what they would call, I guess, a field coordinator in Hialeah in Miami. And so I would spend my weekends doing that. And then when I was a junior, I believe, at Barry University, what happened was there was this event on 9/11, and it was a memorial service. And they opened up the memorial service by allowing the imam to chant Allahu Akbar, and I found it to be extremely inappropriate. And so what happened is I ended up posting about it on my Facebook page, and the story ended up going viral because this local Florida reporter picked it up. And then the next day it was in Breitbart, and it was all over a bunch of different conservative publications. And, the school was contacted over it, and they threatened to kick me out of college for exposing this. And as a result,
And this is in 2012?
No. This was in 2014.
Okay.
And as a result of that, I was invited to this political conference in Palm Beach called Restoration Weekend. And it was at Restoration Weekend where I met James O'Keefe, and obviously I knew who he was, but I had run up to him and said, oh, you're going to want to know who I am. The presidential race is coming up soon, and you're going to need someone to go undercover in the Hillary Clinton campaign, and I want to be that girl. And so he said he would call me, and then, I didn't hear from him for a couple of months, and I thought that he wasn't going to call me. And then one day I got a phone call from James O'Keefe, and he asked me to fly to New York the next day. And so at the time, I had been working for WSBN, which was a Fox affiliate news station in Miami, and going to school full-time as well. And then what ended up happening is on my test run at Project Veritas, I ended up going to a Black Lives Matter rally, and I got Erica Garner, who is Eric Garner's daughter, on video talking about how Al Sharpton was all about the money and took advantage of the Black families he represented. And then in Miami, I infiltrated the Trayvon Martin Foundation and got, Trayvon Martin's family and the lawyers on video saying very similar things about Al Sharpton. Long story short, the story went viral because it was on the front page of the New York Post. And so when Project Veritas saw that my first test run, right, just to see if I was even capable of wearing a hidden camera, was a front page New York Post story, they paid me to quit my job in Miami and asked me to work for them full time. And then I guess to sum it up, my senior year, just a couple months right before graduation, I wanted to expose the hypocrisy on my college campus of how Republicans were treated horribly, and I was constantly threatened with a suspension of my club. And I thought to myself, I bet they would allow me to have an ISIS club. So I put on a hidden camera, and I went to the administrator's office, and I said I wanted to start a new club, and it was called the Sympathetic Students in Support of the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. Right. And so they said that I could have my club, and then I said that the club would be giving aid to members of ISIS and their widows and their children. And the school officials said, all right, that's fine. Just change the name so nobody knows that you're giving money to ISIS. And I said, well, why would I change the name? I don't want to hide it from anybody. And the video ended up going viral, and I got kicked out of college for it. So I was supposed to be valedictorian. And a month before graduation, I got kicked out of college. So then I ended up just moving to New York full-time for 3 years, where I worked for James O'Keefe, and I was undercover and the Hillary Clinton campaign all throughout the 2016 race. And I did a lot of, investigative exposés for Project Veritas. I worked there for about 3 years, and then I decided to start my own media company, and that's what I did. I started my own media company, Illuminate Media, and then I began Loomering people. So, you've seen my videos, I'm sure, where I track down very high-profile Democrats and, jihadists and Jew haters and people on the left, really, radical leftists, and I confront them on live stream. And that's what I did for a while, and I was very popular doing it. I have an online following of millions of people. And, as a result of my exposés into Ilhan Omar, I got banned everywhere. And then there was a report in the Wall Street Journal that said that it was the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, which is a terrorist organization that actually lobbied Twitter to ban me. And shortly after that, I was just banned everywhere. And I started thinking to myself, well, if this is going to happen to me, I'm sure it's going to happen to everyday Americans, and nobody in Congress seems to be doing anything. And conservatives are having their rights violated. I want to ensure that the First Amendment is protected and that the American people have a fighter who isn't going to allow for their civil rights to be violated.
Were your parents politically involved at all, or was your first involvement with the Romney campaign?
No, my parents are not very political. They're Republicans. But I didn't grow up in a hyper-political household. I mean, my parents didn't encourage me to join campaigns, but I was just in college, and like I said, I was the president of college Republicans, and I was 18 at the time, and it was my first time to vote, and Mitt Romney was running against Obama, and I was doing volunteer work for the Republican Party of Florida, and then got involved with the Mitt Romney campaign. So, it was just some political experience.
I think there's been some reticence on Republicans nationally with your candidacy. I think they've been more receptive in Florida. Have you had any interaction with the National Republican Congressional Committee, the House campaign arm, or its chairman, Tom Emmer?
No, I know that several members of Congress had reached out to them on my behalf to ask why I wasn't put on their young gun list, but the NRCC doesn't really seem to want to put me on their young gun list, despite the fact that I've exceeded the benchmarks to be on their list. But, it's the political establishment, and I guess the same way they treated President Trump in 2016, they're not really too fond of outsider candidates like me who challenge the establishment. And so they have not been helpful at all. They haven't provided any assistance, and they have not put me on the list.
In 30 seconds or less, what are the main topics your campaign is focused on?
Well, I'm focused on a lot of issues, but ultimately I believe the two most pressing issues facing our country right now is this big tech tyranny and the silencing of voices as a way to control the flow of information, which is why breaking up big tech is key to my platform, and also law and order. We need to restore law and order in this country. We're seeing absolute lawlessness and a total disregard for, civility and peaceful discourse, and that's because the Democrats, through their dangerous rhetoric, have been inciting political violence in their attempt to orchestrate a Marxist coup against the President of the United States.
President Trump passed an executive order earlier this year asking the Federal Communications Commission to review big tech's liability protection, but it isn't clear that's going to happen before the election. Does it concern you at all that that's taking so long?
Well, look, I think that, with the issue of tech censorship, we've been told for many years now, obviously it's an issue, and we've been told that there was going to be a punishment for big tech, and nothing has happened. And executive orders aren't going to solve the issue right now in an election year, which is when this issue matters most. If you recall, over 2 years ago, I actually confronted Jack Dorsey during the Twitter hearing, and I warned about this, and I made a personal plea to President Trump from inside Congress where, I asked him for help because Jack Dorsey was trying to influence the election and sway the election so that the Democrats could steal the election by censoring and silencing conservatives and accusing them of being Russian bots and, accusing them of hate speech. We see there's a lot of corruption in Congress where, members of both parties are taking money from big tech. And so while a lot of these members of Congress are making false promises to address it, they're actually bought and paid for by big tech. And so, that's a big issue. The money in big tech and their influence in DC, has prevented a lot of action on this matter. But what I think is going to be most effective, and what I would propose in Congress is, look, we have laws in this country, and as Nancy Pelosi always says, nobody is above the law. And the Democrats, right, for the last several years, what did they do to Roger Stone? Well, they accused him of lying to Congress, and they tried to throw him in jail at the height of the coronavirus peak, right? And they said that he lied to Congress. Well, lying to Congress is called perjury, and last time I checked, Jack Dorsey, Mark Zuckerberg, Sheryl Sandberg, and Sundar Pichai appear to all be guilty of committing perjury and lying to Congress about not censoring conservatives, right, and not interfering in elections when we have the evidence, right? We've seen firsthand the Project Veritas tapes where these employees are admitting to censoring people. So, we need to apply the rules and the laws equally in this country. Just because you're a billionaire in Silicon Valley doesn't mean you get to live according to a whole new rule book. It doesn't work that way. And ultimately, I would like to see people like Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg serve time in prison for their crimes.
I should probably ask you to expand on that. What laws would you be interested in seeing them prosecuted under? I suppose you could make the case that you could pursue a case on giving false testimony to Congress, which is what they went after Roger Stone on.
And that's what I'm talking about is perjury, right? You commit perjury, you're supposed to go to prison. So why are Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg not in prison? Why is Sundar Pichai not in prison? If the Democrats are going to go after Roger Stone, and Roger Stone was innocent, why are they not going after Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg and Sundar Pichai, who are not innocent?
What issues are you hearing about from your constituents? Are you getting them more interested in these issues surrounding big tech?
Well, we actually conducted some internal polling with my campaign, and the issue that my constituents are most concerned with is law and order, which is, one of my top two issues that I just elaborated on with you. So law and order is something that I've been pushing for a while now. And, the economy, of course, is another big issue that they're concerned about as well. But yeah, look, this censorship is getting out of control to the point where we don't really seem to have free and fair elections anymore. And it should really concern my constituents because on Tuesday, when I win my primary, I'm going to be the official Republican nominee. And by denying me access to social media, these tech companies are denying the voters of District 21 to utilize their political speech and participate freely in an election. How are they supposed to communicate with a political candidate or, communicate with me when I win my race in November, right? Am I going to be the only member of Congress that has no social media? So they're actually suppressing voters by silencing a candidate for office. So it's a very pressing issue here in the district. And also, too, President Trump is a constituent here in District 21, and they're silencing him too. It's a big problem. It's not just Twitter and Facebook either. You have payment processors, you have banks that are shutting people down. Comcast, whose regional office is located here, they just banned me from sending fundraising texts the other day, and they've been donating to my opponents. So, these are very pressing issues.
Speaking of having President Trump as a constituent, have you reached out to his team, or has his team reached out to you, or are they are they staying out of it at this point?
Well, President Trump has retweeted in support of my candidacy twice, and his senior advisors, including Katrina Pearson, have publicly tweeted in support of my candidacy, saying that my polling is impressive. I also have Karen Giorno running my race, and Karen Giorno was President Trump's Florida State Director in 2016. So, the woman who was behind Trump's primary win in Florida is running my campaign, and President Trump is very fond of Karen, and he knows that Karen's running my race. And I mean, this is President Trump's district, and whether he votes absentee or votes in person, I'll be on the ballot.
Another high-profile supporter you have is Representative Matt Gaetz, who is, in some sense is a lightning rod, but also he has had some bipartisan appeal in the sense that he said kind things about Katie Hill before she resigned from Congress, and has also said kind things about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who he had a Christmas card with last year. Do you think that you would have any similar kind of crossover bipartisan appeal, or do you differ from him on that issue?
I have bipartisan appeal, but I have bipartisan appeal with people who are pro-America. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib do not represent all Democrats. They represent, a very radical Marxist jihadist element that is now taking over the Democrat Party. And so I have appeal to independents and moderate Democrats who don't hate America, who don't want anarchy, who don't want to destroy our Constitution. But no, I don't see myself, sending a Hanukkah card to Ilhan Omar, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah,
I don't really think she would enjoy it much either. I don't know if you've heard the news, but she's not too fond of Jews.
Do you want to elaborate on that?
Ilhan Omar is a raging anti-Semite, and she, this is a woman who has used her position to advocate for individuals who tried to join ISIS, okay? The Democrat Party had to draft an anti-Semitism resolution because their new resident jihadi congresswoman, I'm talking about Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, of course, just couldn't contain themselves and couldn't control themselves in their outbursts about Jews in Israel. These are individuals who are working with CAIR, a terrorist organization that was found to be supporting Hamas. Rashida Tlaib physically assaulted me when I asked her to condemn Hamas, and when I asked her if she recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And so she's, I filed a lawsuit against Rashida Tlaib. She assaulted a Jew who asked her to condemn Hamas. Ilhan Omar, of course, she has attended fundraisers with CAIR. She invited Linda Sarsour as one of her special guests to her congressional swearing-in ceremony, along with Rashida Tlaib. Linda Sarsour has said that we shouldn't humanize Jews. I mean, do I need to go on? This lady is a full-blown Jew-hating jihadist.